Hey there, everyone. Frederick Van Johnson here, your host of the TWiP podcast. So for those of you who are just tuning in or need a little reminder, our mission here at TWiP is simple. We aim to inform, to educate, and to inspire photographers around the world. And guess what? I've been doing that very thing for over a decade now. So with hundreds of episodes in the vault, it turns out there's a wealth of content that most people may not have checked out yet. So to help surface that untapped gold, I'm deploying a new publishing schedule. It'll go something like this. Every Tuesday, I'll release a fresh new episode, and depending on the subject matter, it may be pre-recorded content or it may be a live stream. And then on Thursdays, I'll share one of my all-time favorite episodes from the TWiP Vault. And those episodes will be live streamed and also added into the podcast feed. So if you're already subscribed, there's really nothing more to do. But if you're not subscribed, I suggest you subscribe to the podcast and or the YouTube channel ASAP. Before I roll the very first TWiP rerun, I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for being a loyal subscriber, and stay tuned for more awesome changes coming to TWiP. Now, on to the rerun. Earlier this year, I sat down with Valerie Jardin. She's an incredibly talented street photographer, and we hadn't had a proper catch-up in over a year. So we thought, why not just do it live right here on the podcast? That's what we did. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this first TWiP rerun. It's a conversation about street photography with Valerie Jardin. This is TWiP. Hey, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. My good friend Valerie Jardin is on the show. She's a street photographer. She's an educator. She's an author. She's a mom, she's a wife, she's all these things. And she somehow manages to keep all these plates spinning and keep a smile on her face. We're going to dive into where in the world is Valerie, what she's up to. We may squeeze in some street photography conversation in there, but this is more about two friends catching up after we haven't had a conversation in many, many months. Valerie, welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Bonjour. Well, nice to see you. It's been so long. It's actually been too long since we've seen each other in person. I think you due for another trip to Paris or something, Frederick.
You know what? On my list for 23, my non-negotiable list for 2023 is travel. Paris could very easily find itself on that list. Right now, Iceland, outside of the U.S., Iceland, Tokyo, and Spain are on the list. I could very easily add Paris to that. When are you doing a workshop in Paris again?
Well, January, May, and October.
So it would probably be May or October, definitely not January.
But you'll love Iceland and you'll love Spain. Haven't been to Japan, but that's on my list as well. So you'll have a blast. Yeah.
I love it. And you also do workshops in Normandy as well, right?
Oh, yes. That's that is very special to me. That's the workshop that's all inclusive. You get picked up in Paris. It's all luxury, 5-star accommodation, beachfront for a week. And it's a trip of a lifetime. I only do that once a year in September, but it's always very, very special. And I have people coming from all over the world on that one. And it's the only workshop where I have 3 spots for non-photographers too. And it's always a really fun experience. So yeah, that one is special. It's home.
Yeah, I know. You have a home there. So, just sort of branching off of that, before we started recording, and at the beginning, I sort of rattled off the list of things that you're doing, right? So podcaster was on that list. So you've paused the podcast, but author, workshop leader, photographer, you're an accomplished street photographer, you're a Fuji sponsored photographer. I forget what they call those, the people that are sponsored.
Ex-photographer, although that we're still photographers, but we're ex-photographers.
X, not EX, but X, right? Ex-photographer.
That's right.
But you have so much going on and you do it all exceedingly well. What's the secret? What's the secret to doing all this stuff?
I work well under pressure. And, when you're on a plane every 2-3 weeks on an international flight, you just you just have to get organized. And although I think I learned a lot during the pandemic, where actually I had to stop for a year and a half. I stopped the workshops for a year and a half, like everybody else had to. I realized that maybe 14 workshops in a year was four too many. So now I'm trying to keep it at 10. So it's a lot of wear and tear. All the time. I'm on a plane more than most pilots at this point. So I felt like maybe I need to spend a little bit more time to settle in between and not always living out of a suitcase. So it's been good. I started again, almost 2 years ago now again, and the workshops, and at a different pace. Although it feels like I'm always on a plane. I think there is only 1 month in the year that I don't fly. It's been a different pace, and I enjoy it more. I seriously, this was my 10-year anniversary, 2022. It's 10-year anniversary of teaching workshops and doing that almost exclusively for my business. And it was my best year. I just loved it the most of all the years I've been doing this. Yeah. So I feel like I did something right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I remember when you started, and it seems like you've been successful from the start, right? A lot of photographers have touched on workshops and maybe run one or two, and then they don't do anymore or something. But you've been consistent and over like the last decade. And as you and I talked before, you're like, a lot of the people that come to your workshops are repeat, right? So it's like a family like a family reunion every workshop. It's like, how do you build that? What's the secret? Give the secret.
See, I
to
don't
Valerie's
know.
success.
If there was a secret, I would have written the book about it, and I'd be rich because everybody wants to know. But there really is no secret. No, there is no competition in this business. Although a lot of people think it's a very competitive business. No, there is no competition. There are plenty of people who do workshops in Paris and who don't get repeat customers. People keep coming back. I'm just doing it the way I would want it to be if I was a customer, and I'm having fun. If there is a secret, that would be it. I guess. Just doing it because you love it. That's something you really have to love. It's a lot of work. It's a people job before it's a photography job anyways. You have 10 customers, 10 photographers with you for a weekend or a week, and you have to wear many hats, and you're not there for your own photography. You do that before or after, but during, you'll get a shot or two during the workshop time, because you have to do demos, and people want to see how you do it. Of course, so I'm out there with my clients all day long, and you were on a workshop with me, but I give them the shots. And so it's really about wanting to share your passion and your vision and your knowledge more than it is about photography. So, because I get my best shots when I'm by myself, obviously, not when I'm teaching. And so it's I think a lot of people fail at it because they get into it with the wrong perception.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the workshop that you invited me to join you on, thank you again for that, was in Paris. And I remember one of the takeaways from that workshop was and all the workshop attendees were talking about this as well. Like, what is the power source that powers Valerie? Like, what is it? Because you, like me, I consider myself fit, and in shape, but even I was like, okay, all right, Eiffel Tower, right behind you.
No, it is funny. I never feel tired. I could seriously walk forever. I've never felt tired. And on a workshop, when we go from point A to point B, once we're at an area of interest, then I have everybody's, go in different directions. I give them pointers. Then I do one-on-one with them. So I do, like, it would be actually fun to see, and I have seen it actually. The Google the map of what I do in a day from outer space, it probably looks really silly because I'm zigzagging and going back and forth, and and so I usually end up with twice as many miles than the rest of the group because I'm always going back and forth. And but I love it. I love it. And when you love it, you don't count. When you love it, it's like it's the best thing ever.
You don't want to stop. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
For the folks in the audience that aren't familiar with you, Valerie, and your genre, which is street photography, you have a what I would call a unique in the industry sort of perspective on gear or lack thereof, right? So you're not the photographer with the Charlie Brown backpack on, full of like 4 lenses and strobes and a tripod hanging out the side and all these things. What do you take out there with you to let people know?
I've only shot with the X100 camera for 9 years now, and they have yet to make a camera that I'm going to like better than this one. And so that's all I take. My camera, I don't even own a camera bag anymore because I never use them, and just a couple extra batteries, and it's really that's all I need. That's all anybody needs. I mean, I went to Iceland with that camera, so
wow.
dare you to limit yourself to 1 camera, 1 lens for Iceland, and not a zoom lens.
I mean, that's a good point. I say it ain't gonna happen. Say it flippantly, but the issue is, like, for me, and I would guess a lot of other photographers, is if you're going to some place where you feel like it's a once in a lifetime, or at least a few times in a lifetime opportunity, the knee-jerk reaction is to be prepared, right? Preparedness. Like, okay, I'm going to Iceland. Okay, I need a wide because I've seen these shots of blue icebergs and I need to get that shot. And what if I want a long exposure to smooth that water out? Okay, I need a tripod to go with that. Oh, volcanoes, that might be far away. I need 7200 for that. Absolutely. Oh, what if I want to do some model shots? Oh, I need my 85 for sure. Then you need the batteries and the charger. Oh, aerials. I can't not shoot aerials out there. I need a drone and all the stuff that goes right. So those are the thoughts that are swirling in someone's head like mine. How do you not have those thoughts as a photographer when you go there? Don't you ever get in the feeling like, oh, if I had only brought a super wide lens, I could do this thing? You don't have those thoughts? I
did at first. I mean, actually, talking about Iceland, that was that moment where I knew this, I can sell everything else I own. And I went to Iceland. I still had my Canon 5D Mark II. I had, the 24 to 70, the 70 to 200. Everything was ready to get on the plane. I had just received my first X100. And I didn't know it well yet. And so I thought, well, I'll definitely bring it. But I had the backpack ready. And at the last minute, I mean, Uber was in the driveway. And I left the backpack behind, and I just grabbed this camera. And yes, I remember I did a video about this where, yes, there are times where it's like, yeah, those horses are a little far. I wish I had my long lens, but you know what? You just make it work. And it was the most liberating trip. We went to Iceland and the rest of the time to France for several weeks. And I think we hit another country that year. And it was the most liberating, the most fun I ever had on a vacation. And that was it. When I came back, I sold everything and I just kept this camera. So. Wow.
So when are you going to drop that camera and just bring your phone? Because phones are pretty damn good these days.
I know. Yeah. The thing is, I never have the latest phone.
That's true.
Keep my phone. Yeah. I don't even know what version I have, but and I use it all the time. Like I do stories on Instagram. Like it's so pretty right now. It's snowing, and so I do that with the phone. But yeah, I mean, I would use my phone if my camera failed, no problem. But I just like my camera. It's just part of me. So I'm happy with that.
I love it. See, it's interesting when I speak to photographers like you, and when I say like you, the minimalist photographers that aren't gear obsessed, right? So gear obsessed photographers are, and I have a little bit in there, of me in there as well, because I like gear. I don't know. I'm a nerd in that respect. But I look at the people that aren't afflicted by that gear acquisition syndrome disease, and with a lot of respect, especially the people that are shooting with old beat up gear and processing on not the latest computer using an outdated version of Photoshop or Lightroom and don't even care. They're just like, the images that they produce are exponentially better than somebody that has all the gear and all the latest software and all the things. That I feel like those artists are more true artists, because it's about the vision of what they're trying to create versus looking good getting there or having the latest whiz bang feature and all that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's true in a sense. A lot of photographers get into photography because of the gear too, and then they discover a passion for the art. Or people one day realize like, all this great gear, the new gear is not making me a better photographer. Unless the new gear gets you out the door more. And that's the only way a new camera will make you a better photographer, if you use it more than the old one. And so that's fine. There are people who feel really good when they have that little red dot on their camera, and that's fine. If you have the money and you know that the camera is not going to make a difference, but it makes you feel good and it makes you want to be out there making pictures, then get the new camera. For me, really, it would be so counterproductive. I never want to try new gear. Fujifilm actually, they did send me some gear to beta test in the past, and I said, no, unless it's the X100 6, maybe after this one, I don't even want to beta test anything. I don't like trying new gear. It's counterproductive to my creativity, because I need to learn something new, and it's not intuitive like this one is. I forget I have it in my hand, and it becomes an extension of my vision. And anything new, it would take a while to do that. So I'm only interested in one camera. So.
Yeah, I love it.
Probably not good for the industry. Although now nobody can even get a hold of this camera. So I don't even think you can order it at the moment. It's completely out. And a lot of people want it, but it's completely
I wanted that camera. I told you a long time ago that not getting that camera probably changed the trajectory of how I feel about gear, because I was lusting after that camera. I couldn't find it anywhere. This was years and years ago, right? Couldn't find it anywhere. Drove to San Francisco, which is about an hour from my house, and went to whatever camera store was there. I forget at the time, Sammy's or something. We went in there thinking they would have it, right? They had all the cameras, and they didn't have it. They did not have it. Like, we should get some in later next month or whatever. I'm like, okay, what do you have? And they showed me some food or some Panasonic cameras. So I'm like, okay, I'll take one of those. Now I'm an ambassador for Panasonic. So I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting how things flow and the different ways that people think about gear, like whether it's minimalist like you, or I just love this camera. It's muscle memory. I'm just going to use it 'cause it's all about I'm going to work on improving my photography, not improving my kit. Right. So that's really interesting. The other side of this, one of the other topics I wanted to broach with you is the publishing industry. Before we started talking, you mentioned that over the years, you had published 16 books.
Yes.
Some ebooks, some physical books.
Yeah.
So you're in an ideal position. You're in an ideal position to answer the question, which I know publishers, have their own opinions on, but is it still viable to write a physical book, not the ebook, like a physical book, and go through the whole process of writing that book, considering how fast technology is moving? My knee-jerk reaction to that is no. Although I love physical books, right? I love them, but most of them are outdated if they're not on some evergreen topic like psychology or posing or something like that.
No, I think for the photographer, being published by a reputable publisher is adds credibility. If you're teaching, if you want to get your name out there, I think it would help. Although no publisher will publish you unless you're already known and your work is selling. So it's kind of a vicious circle, because the publisher totally relies on you to sell the book, by the way, and your social media following. So, but there is something to be said to be published. And I was published by 2 different publishers, and they were 2 different experiences. And it was fine. Then you have a strict deadline, which is what I liked. And I'm a deadline person. And so then when I write ebooks, I have to actually ask a friend to give me a deadline, and I stick to that deadline. I can't give myself a deadline that easily, because I know I can change it too easily. So I usually have a friend that I say, okay, you give me a deadline. I can do it within 3 months, 2 months. So give me a date, and I will stick to that date. So it's harder to do it yourself because of that. You don't have the deadline of the publisher that said, okay, we signed the contract, we need the book in 3 months or 6 months. But other than that, although I write ebooks, I don't read them. I need a physical book. So. And then for fine art, I self-published 2 books of just photography, no text at all, just photography. And the first one was a great experience because it was just beautiful right away. They got the black and white just right, and I didn't realize how difficult it was to actually print black and white for in a book, and to do it right. The second one was a total disaster, and it had to be redone. And I said I was going to do one a year, and it's like, it's been 3 years. I'm like, nope, not. And I have several in the works. I could send one to a publisher or to a printer tomorrow, but it's like, no, I don't want to go through that experience. And the thing is, the book was already sold before it was printed. And so I had no other option but to have it, to fight with the printer and say, no, that is not right. It's too green. It's too purple. It's like, can't you get black and white right? It was so frustrating when the first one was so beautiful and they could not do it again. And the same printer, sorry. So, right, it's the quest for the right printer for the job, and it's such a headache. However, you have full control, you have full creative control. Whereas when you have your book published by a publisher, you have no control over the title, the cover. I mean, it's kind of a battle to take control over a little bit, and I like to have control. I don't want recognizable faces, for example, on a cover of a book. So I was really determined to get a little control over that. But even the title, you don't control that. So you have to be able to let go of a lot of things, and that's not always very pleasant.
What about the economics of the print or hard copy book versus the digital? Does one make more money than the other because there are no printing costs involved?
Well, if you self-publish ebooks, that's pretty much full profit.
Right.
But if from the publisher, I mean, you get a very small percentage. You have to sell a lot of copies. Copies to
It's more about the cachet of having that book, right?
Exactly. You don't do it. You don't publish a photography book for the money. You publish it for the legacy and having your work published by a reputable publisher. I mean, I was very fortunate. The last one with Rocky Nook, made #1 on Amazon right away when it came out. Within a few months, it was translated in several languages. So it's doing really, really well. And it continues to sell well. But a lot of people, even if you get an advance, and I remember I got an advance for my first book, which I was shocked because I didn't even realize there was still such a thing as getting an advance before you write a book, especially when, it was my first book. I got an advance, and then I talked with another guy who had been published by the same publisher. And he said, "Oh yeah, I published with them 5 years ago. I finally got my first check." I'm like, "What do you mean your first check? It's been 5 years." He said, "Well, yeah, above the advance." I'm like, really? So it's like, oh my gosh, this is kind of crazy. And thankfully, mine sold really well, and I I went over the advanced within 6 months. But it's kind of you learn a lot. I mean, no matter what, it's worth doing for everything you will learn in the process. So whether you decide to do it again or not, then, it's a good learning experience.
And the book that you were talking about was this one, right? Street Photography Assignments?
Yeah, that's the latest one with Rocky Nook, yeah. And so that one has been translated in German. It was like one of the Die Punkt in Germany said that was one of their best sellers ever. And Germany, I mean, it's a pretty small market. Since most of the German photographers probably already had their copy in English, because most people speak English. Then it was translated in German, which, there's not a lot of need for German books outside of Germany. So, but they say it's doing really well. And then translated into Italian. Yeah, so been good.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I don't know. I've written one. I did a book with a long time ago. It was like 20 plus years ago, with Peach Pit at the time on mobile technology. I wrote that thing on, I remember the process was like, how hard can it be? I love writing. I'm a decent writer. Oh my God. Even with, you remember Carrie Norsworthy? She was my editor at the time. I don't know if so she's my editor. I had a great editor. This was the same editor that helped Scott Kelby with all the books that he wrote, right? So I was like, I'm set. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
Problem was I was working at Apple at the time, and I had that Apple schedule. So best laid plans, right? I'm going to work full time and have a family, and I'm going to squeeze in writing on this book. And then with the deadlines looming, and it was just like stressful, right, to get this thing done, which turned me off to like books.
Yeah. So ebooks are great, and they don't have to be, you don't have a word count, and you have free creative control. So it's good. You can really get to the point with a little ebook. So I have a lot of ebooks, but they're not, 300 pages either. So I think, and then you can price them low, and it's passive income, which I think for any solo entrepreneur, passive income is so important. And so that's been really good. Yeah,
but the passive income comes if you have an audience to promote it to. Part of the thing that publishers bring is distribution, and you're going to be in this bookstore and all the whole 9 yards. With ebooks, the onus is on you to get the word out, and for infrastructure. How are you going to serve up the book? How are you going to take money for the book? All that.
And everything, you have to, I use a service that takes care of the value added tax for foreign sales and everything, because if you do it yourself, you have to figure all that out. It's like, no, I can't do that. So I pay a monthly service that is the ebook publisher. They take their cut, and then the rest of the money is put into my account. When it's money while you sleep. So that's really good. But you need to get some of the work done by people who know what they're doing, because otherwise it just becomes a major headache, especially if you don't like numbers like me. So
yeah. Well, Valerie, I want to switch gears before we end this. I want to talk about photography. Imagine that, street photography. You've been shooting for quite a while, right? And teaching and writing, like we just talked about, on the topic of street photography and that whole genre and the psychology of it and the technique and all the things. Over the years, has it changed? Have you seen any changes in street photography? Like in portrait photography, lighting techniques and, the zeitgeist of these different genres change over time. Does the same thing happen in street, or is there a popular kind of street?
Well, there is always the popular thing, but what I teach people to see, first of all. So, and to find their true vision, not to shoot for the likes, because if you shoot for the likes, then you'll be shooting silhouettes and dramatic light all the time, because that's what's popular on social media. But yes, and that's not even that difficult to do. So if that's your thing, you can shoot that. But there's so much more thing that people should explore. Like I'm actually working on a winter project that's all about I can never say that, intentional camera movement, where I shoot at 1/8 of a second and I move the camera, and it's all snow scenes. So people in the snow I started 2-3 weeks ago, and I'm having a blast. It's letting go of everything you've learned, but it's so much more difficult than photographing a properly exposed photograph, because you have to you still need the same compositional skills and story, but then you have to get the right movement at the right time to get just enough blur to get that mood. And so there is always a way to find something fun and different. So I help photographers get outside of that box of what they think street photography is, because for some people it's really intimidating because they think, oh, it's getting really close to people and photographing, being in people's faces. No, that's just one way to do it, and not the way I would encourage people to do it, actually, because if that's all we did, that would be awful for the genre. And yes, you can do some amazing silhouettes one day, but other days you may want to capture an expression. And so it's important to be able to do it all and do it well, and that way, and work with abstract and creative filters, natural filters that you find. I mean, this summer I had so much fun working with, putting crumpling a clear plastic bag and actually putting it in front of my lens, and photographing people walking by the water, and everybody's like, wow, this is so cool. What lens do you use for that? I'm like, nothing. It's just always the same camera, and I used a plastic bag that I put in front of it to create that dreamy effect. So really experimenting and having fun. I think people forget to have fun, and I think social media is probably a part of the problem. Is people want to shoot for the likes, and they're not shooting for themselves. And so, and it takes a while to get back to that. Why did you pick up a camera for the originally for the first time? It wasn't to please people on social media, because chances are you probably started before social media. So why? And trying to get back to that satisfaction of creating something different that is really you, and not everything else you see on Instagram. So and so there's so many ways to approach it, to experiment. I'm teaching an online class right now where the last assignment they had was creating motion in a still photographs, but not just by panning. Panning was just one of them, but using like 3 or 4 different techniques that I taught them. And I'm just getting the pictures for the critique session right now, and they worked hard. They had it was not an easy assignment. So really trying to find new ways of seeing. And so nothing changes. Trends do change depending on what is popular in social media, but it's so important to be just true to yourself and do what moves, photograph what moves you. And because you're really the only person you need to please in this. So
yeah, do you subscribe to the whole idea of doing self projects, or creating, like you said, like the whole idea of putting plastic in front of the lens and doing a series based on that? Is that a good way for photographers to kind of get inspired, but introduce constraints so that they're not all over the place?
Yeah, I mean, I think people need to be a little relaxed with projects, like the 365, and that's fine, but it can also be counterproductive because you need to absolutely produce something that you want to show within, every day. I think you need to you need some boundaries. Like I was working on a summer vibes project, and I was really sad when summer ended because it was my last summer vibe picture, and it was almost every day, but no pressure if I skipped a day or if I posted to the next day of that something fun that I was experiencing at the time. And it was mostly vacation pictures, summer pictures. It's fine. So don't put too much pressure. It's good to show them because I think you have it gives you accountability to keep working on a series. But you should always have several series. I have several that I work on depending on my mood or where I am. Like, I don't like crowds and I don't photograph crowds. So then I have a series on hands. So you can get really close to hands of strangers when you're in a fair or a market. So then I work on that series when I'm in that situation. So right now I'm working on this winter dreaming series, which is all in slow shutter speed in the snow. Snow is a big part of it. And then finding the right movement and dreamy snowscapes with people. Thankfully, everybody wears black in the snow. So
Yeah.
which is a good thing. The other day, it was like there's a person wearing all black and they had a little white dog. I'm like, well, that doesn't work. I see the leash, but the dog has disappeared. And then
Like walking the ghost dog.
The right amount of blur, So I'm having fun with that. As long as you have fun, really. That's the key. And so I think everyone needs to find their voice and really do what makes them happy. Again, it's not and I think if it makes you happy and you love to share it, it will show and people will most definitely respond accordingly. And if they don't, well, it doesn't take anything away from you. They can move on and look at something else. So.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And the other direction before I let you go is just we talk about that, which is kind of the purity side of photography, like just, being, like you said, being true to yourself and going out there and taking pictures, not being sort of mired in the gear or the technology of it all, and leaning more towards the artistic interpretation of whatever scene you're looking at or whatever self-project that you're adding to based on your mood, etc. How do you feel? I know how you're going to answer this, but how do you feel about the latest trend that we're seeing in technology, at least, of artificial intelligence or AI generated imagery, and using those AI never existed before images as part of a real piece of art, or something like that, something that's not necessarily completely human generated? How do you feel about that whole world of AI?
Well, I think it's just not photography. So I'm a photographer. I'm not even interested in post-processing. So you're not going to sell me on anything else, Frederick. You know that. I know. Less than 5 seconds per picture in Lightroom. The only reason I use Lightroom is because of the collection that I use for books and everything. So I make the decision before I press the shutter if it's going to be color, black and white. I haven't shot a RAW file in 9 years. So I'm not about to experiment with anything else. I love photography for the storytelling aspect only. So, and same as, people were doing HDR and all that stuff, and it's all fads. And when it comes down to it, what do we respond the most to is pure photography. That's the art of capturing a story. So anything else, it's something different. I mean, it's great, and it keeps. I think a lot of people need new things all the time, and good for them. I don't, so I don't even really have an opinion. It's not something I would ever be interested in trying. And I'm really a purist, and although I use a digital camera, I pretty much use it as if it was film. And I love the technology I have, but again, I never have the latest Lightroom or anything. I don't care. It does, I use 3 sliders, so I don't even need Lightroom.
That's awesome. See, that is awesome. And that you're absolutely right, because there's a whole segment of photography and photographers is very trend driven, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you like, you like that. That's great. But there's I recall over the years has been, remember the whole HDR trend? Yep. And everybody's doing all these crunchy sort of HDR, fantastical.
And it's all gone now. It's like,
it's for the most part gone. It's
really it dated those pictures.
It did.
And,
yeah. You look at them, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. It's like, dogs on velvet playing poker, right? I remember.
But we all tried it. We all
did.
tried it because people were really responded. It could be, you know how that saying is, you can't polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter. And that was HDR. And so it made any ordinary boring picture look wow, because it was like nobody had ever seen anything that vibrant before. And but I like, that's why I like to always shoot the same. I don't like filters, because in a body of work, it's like if you start using different filters and different this and different that, well, it kind of dates your picture, and it's kind of in a body of work. It's like, oh, well, yeah, that was the trend of using this, and oh, here is sepia tone because we had the sepia tone years, and then it's not consistent. I mean, my work is consistent. My black and white is always the same black and white, and my color is one of two colors. It's usually classic chrome or classic negative, and that's it. So, depending of the color.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Pretty simple. Simple.
Yeah, it's kind of like in cooking, you can't unseason a steak. Like if a steak is cooked properly, is going to be, assuming that, you're not vegetarian or vegan, but if it's cooked properly, a steak is going to be delicious on its own without much help. But you start seasoning it and A1 and salt and pepper and this and that, you lose the steak, and you can't take that stuff off. Now the steak is gone. Same with these, adding filters and all these other things on top of an image, especially at the point of capture, right? You introduce these things into the data that cannot be removed later as trends change. So
but I'm glad people love these things, because I mean the industry needs those people, and that's good.
We need to keep harvesting those people so that the real photographers,
because they're not gonna make money on me. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, because I think way back when, even before you started your podcast, we had a conversation. I think we had made a bet or something that you would have upgraded your camera and bought something new, or been seduced into some high-end mirrorless camera or whatever. Nope. Valerie's still shooting with the same camera with a crank on the side.
I have two of the same, because I always need a backup when I travel so much, and that's it. Actually, I don't even have a camera body. I have several good lenses from Fujifilm, but I don't even have a camera body to put them on anymore. So I need to get that, because I also have some Lens Baby lenses that I would like to use once in a while. I need to get a small, just an XT30 or something small and easy to use.
And that's a caveat, right? That's a caveat to throw in there. You brought up Lens Baby. The Lens Baby lenses are something that you introduce at the point of capture that's then baked into the data.
They're awesome.
But that's a whole different art form right there. I feel like that is a whole different... If people haven't tried Lens Baby lenses, they need to that's a whole new world of photography that opens up. That's both... It's serendipity, right?
Yeah,
because
it's so challenging, especially if you apply it to street photography. I mean, I have a workshop participant who's been on several workshops this last year, and she's coming on 2 or 3 more this year, and she only uses a Lens Baby, and I love it. I mean, it's you really have to let go of the notion of sharpness altogether, because nothing is ever going to be super sharp, whether you want it or not. Right. And it's all manual, and choose your where you want to tilt your focus, your sharp is focused, and it's so challenging, but it's so much fun. So and again, you'll never get that satisfaction to do something like that in post-processing, and you'll never have the same merit either. It's really, the merit is in getting it in camera, not in getting it in post-processing. That's a complete, that is not, you're not a photographer if you do all this in post-processing. The photographer does it in camera. It's a different set of skills. And I'm always blown away with the amount of time people spend on an image and what they can do. But it's not photography at that point. The photography part is what you learn to capture in camera. Then after that, you're, I don't know, a post processor.
Yeah. And at on the Lens Baby side, I think the positive and the negative simultaneously of Lens Baby photography is that it's not repeatable. Right. So if you take a shot and you articulate your lens in a certain way to get the shot and the light's right there and, boom, you get it. You've created that instance in time that is not post-processed. And chances are you're probably, even if you try to go back to that same spot in 10 minutes, the sun has moved and everything's different. It's not repeatable. And the definition of like professional photography is being able to repeat something again and again and, create a saleable, repeatable result. But that's not exactly fun, right? With a Lens Baby, you put that thing on there, like you're saying, if you're doing street photography or portrait photography even, you're having fun. It's at that point, you're having fun.
And that's why I'm doing, with just ICM and putting fun things in front of my camera. It's, it's that same fun. And I urge people to try that. Just think outside the box. Photography can get awfully boring if you don't innovate and find new ways of seeing. So, so make 2023 a year of new ways of seeing.
So let's end on this. One tip that you can throw out there for photographers that are interested in jumping into the genre, the street photography genre. They're not sure what to do. I don't want to get people mad on the street because I took their photo of them at this coffee shop. I don't want to take pictures of people's kids and get in trouble for that. I just want to, what should the photographer that wants to start experimenting in street, what should they do first?
Well, just stick to a focal length. Don't shoot with a zoom lens because there's nothing creepier than that. So short lens, get close, or use your phone, and start with a comfort space. You may not be super close right away, and that may never be you. You may never be that photographer that can be within inches of people. That's all right. You may be a more minimalist photographer. There's so many ways to approach it. Check out some of my work. I love it all. I mean, from getting super close to people where I literally am right over their shoulder taking a picture as if I'm seeing through their eyes and they don't even know I'm there, to a very minimalist scene where the human element is really tiny, but the true focal point in a beautiful architecture, for example. So, or even do portraits of strangers. There's so many ways you can do this. So just look at the work of some photographers that you like, and then try to get inspired and go out there and try, or get one of my books.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. No, not even joking. Yeah, your books are excellent, and you have a really unique way of teaching both at the workshops and in text. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
If people want to sign up for a workshop, assuming that there are still some slots available, or otherwise connect with you, what's the best location for them to go online?
ValerieJardin.com, ValerieJardin.com, or ValerieJardinPhotography.com. They will both take you to the same place. Same on Instagram, Valerie Jardin. And Vero, I've been on it for just a few weeks. I don't even know how to say it. That new Vero True Social, or Vero True Social. That's kind of cool too. I don't know if you tried it yet, Frederick, but
I have not.
It's becoming a pretty busy social media platform, and it's pretty cool. There's no advertising, so yeah.
Yay! Can't wait for that. Okay, well, cool. All right, we'll leave it right there. Valerie, thank you so much for coming on. Always a pleasure chatting with you. Have a good, it sounds like you guys are going to have a white Christmas out there. We will not.
And it's, see, I just lost all the light. It's super dark now. At 4:00, it's dark. I feel like we're living in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's still light here, and we have no snow on the ground, and have no plans to have any in California. So, at least at this elevation. At this elevation, no snow. So, So cool. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate you. And happy holidays.
You too.
This is TWiP.